I caught her hand trembling over my glass before she thought I was looking. A pale powder slipped into my drink, swirling like smoke in water. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, the child I raised after her mother walked out on us. And yet, here she was, standing in my kitchen, slipping poison into the orange juice I had just poured. For a moment, I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My heart beat so hard against my chest I thought she could hear it. She glanced around the room, not realizing that in the reflection of the window above the sink, I saw everything. My hand gripped the counter so tight my knuckles turned white. My daughter, Emily, 32 years old, with soft brown hair that used to curl into my chest when she was a child. Now she stood in the very home I built with my bare hands, trying to end me. She slid the glass back on the table, her face calm, almost too calm, and called out, "Dad, your drink's ready." I walked toward the table slowly, each step heavy with disbelief. The memories of raising her flooded me. Feeding her when we had barely enough to eat, working extra shifts at the plant so she could go to college, standing in the rain outside her high school waiting to pick her up because she didn't want to ride the bus. I remembered every sacrifice. And now this. I forced a smile and sat down. My old bones ached as I reached for the glass, but before my lips touched it, I switched the drink with hers. Smooth, natural, just the way I'd done back in the factory when the younger guys tried to trick me into drinking their liquor-laced sodas. Her eyes widened, just for a second, then she looked down quickly, pretending to scroll through her phone. "Cheers," I whispered, raising the glass. But I didn't drink. Not yet. The air in the kitchen thickened. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder. I could hear the clock ticking above the door. Tick, tick, tick. I studied her face, searching for the girl who once made me Father's Day cards out of crayon and construction paper. But all I saw now was someone who wanted me gone. Why? Money? Shame? Or maybe someone else's influence? Her husband, perhaps? Or the whispers I've been hearing about how much pressure she was under. I didn't know, but I was going to find out. I placed the glass back on the table, untouched. Emily glanced up, her lips parting slightly, the faintest tremor in her jaw. "Aren't you going to drink it, Dad?" I smiled again, but my chest was burning. I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask her how she could betray me after everything. But instead, I kept my voice steady, calm, almost too calm. "Later. I'm not thirsty right now." Her shoulders loosened, but only for a moment. Then she reached for the glass. My glass, the one I had swapped. My hand shot out and stopped hers. "Emily," I said, my voice low and steady. "Why don't you sit with me a while?" She froze. Her eyes darted toward me, then quickly away. I could see it in her: fear, guilt, maybe regret, but not love. Not anymore. The truth was clear now. My daughter had become my enemy. And as she sat down across from me, pretending everything was normal, I realized something I never thought I would. I wasn't safe in my own home. But what she didn't know was this: I was no fool. I had survived worse. I had lived through layoffs, injuries, heartbreak, and loneliness. And I wasn't about to let my own child take me down without knowing why. So I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands, my face calm, but my mind racing. If my daughter wanted a game, then a game she would get. Only this time, I would play it better, smarter, and I would make sure the truth came out. As Emily shifted nervously in her seat, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. I narrowed my eyes, my pulse quickening. This wasn't just about Emily. No, there was something bigger at play. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the moment I picked up that phone, everything would change forever. The phone kept buzzing on the counter, but I didn't move. Not yet. I wanted Emily to leave the kitchen first. She finally excused herself, saying something about needing to check on her husband, and her footsteps faded up the stairs. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. I stared at that phone like it was a loaded gun. But before I answered, my mind drifted back to the years when everything was different. When my little girl still looked at me like I was her whole world. I was 27 when her mother walked out. Emily was only 2. I remember standing in the doorway of our small ranch-style house in Cleveland, watching the taillights disappear down the street, holding my crying daughter in my arms. I promised her that night that she would never feel abandoned, not as long as I was alive. That promise carried me through 3 decades of hard labor, broken bones, and long nights. I worked at the steel plant 12 hours on, sometimes 14, just to keep a roof over our heads. When money was tight, I'd skip meals so she could eat. On her 5th birthday, I pawned my wedding ring to buy her a dollhouse she'd been staring at in the store window for weeks. She hugged me so tight that day, I thought my ribs would crack. "Thank you, Daddy," she said. "You're the best in the world." I lived for those words. When she hit middle school, she started pulling away, like kids do. But I stayed close. I showed up to every choir recital, every parent-teacher conference, even when I was dead tired and covered in grease from the factory. She'd wave at me from the stage, embarrassed maybe, but I could always see that flicker of pride in her eyes. By high school, I noticed the changes. The late-night phone calls, the secrets, the way she rolled her eyes at me when I asked simple questions. Still, I held on. I saved every spare dollar for her college fund, even turned down chances to date again because I didn't want anyone to think I was replacing her mother. Emily was my whole life. She had to be. I remember her graduation day like it was yesterday. She walked across that stage in her cap and gown, her face glowing. I clapped louder than anyone. I thought we had made it. I thought all the sacrifices were worth it. And when she hugged me afterward, whispering, "I'll make you proud, Dad," I believed her. But pride turned to distance. Calls became less frequent. Visits grew shorter. She got married to a man named Victor, a man I never quite trusted. He was too polished, too smooth with his words. The kind of man who measured people by the size of their bank account. When I shook his hand at the wedding, his eyes flicked past me like I was already part of the past. I felt a chill then, a warning. But Emily was happy, or at least I thought she was, so I stayed silent. The years passed, and things changed. Suddenly, she was asking about my pension, about the house, about things I'd spent a lifetime building. She spoke with rehearsed kindness, but I could feel the weight underneath, like someone was feeding her lines. And every time she brought up those subjects, Victor was always hovering nearby. Now, sitting in that kitchen with the poisoned glass still on the table, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. My daughter's love had been bought or stolen, and I wasn't sure if she even knew it. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, pulling me back to the present. My hand shook as I reached for it. I turned the screen toward me. The name flashing on the display made my stomach drop. Margaret. I hadn't heard from her in over 20 years. Emily's mother, the woman who had walked away. And for the first time in decades, I realized whatever was happening now, it didn't start tonight. It started the day she left us. The name on the screen glowed like a ghost I thought I'd buried. Margaret, Emily's mother, the woman who had once held my heart, then shattered it into pieces so sharp I still found myself bleeding decades later. I hadn't spoken to her since the day she left us. Emily barely too, me barely holding on. And now, after all these years, she was calling? At the very moment I caught my daughter trying to slip something into my drink, I let the phone buzz until it nearly shook off the counter. My hand hovered above it, torn between throwing it across the room and answering. Finally, I swiped the screen. Hello. For a moment, silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 30 years. Older, softer, but still unmistakably hers. Nathan. My throat tightened. Why are you calling me, Margaret? I know what Emily did, she whispered. Her words cut through me like broken glass. You can't drink anything she gives you. You can't trust her right now. I froze. What are you talking about? How the hell would you know that? There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Because she told me. My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the counter, staring at the poisoned glass still sitting on the table. You've been in contact with Emily? For months, Margaret admitted. She reached out to me. She said Victor wanted her to convince you to sign the house over. Your pension, too. She's under pressure, Nathan. More than you realize. I shut my eyes, a storm raging inside me. My daughter had reached out to the very woman who abandoned us, and now they were plotting against me. My heart cracked under the weight of betrayal, but anger burned hot enough to keep me standing. Why should I believe a damn word you say? I snapped. You left us. You left her, and now you show up, 30 years later, acting like you care. I do care, Margaret whispered, her voice breaking. I was wrong to leave. But Nathan, listen to me. Victor is dangerous. He's been pushing Emily to get control of your assets. If she doesn't, he's threatened to. She trailed off, her voice catching. Threatened to what? I pressed, my chest tightening. To leave her, to take their little boy with him. My stomach dropped. My grandson. I rarely saw him. Victor always made excuses. But I knew Emily loved that boy more than life itself. Was she so desperate to keep her family together that she would sacrifice me? The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I said, if what you're telling me is true, then Emily has chosen him over me, over her own father. She's trapped, Margaret said. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Nathan. I just need you to be careful. Promise me you won't drink anything she gives you. My hand trembled around the phone. I wanted to hang up, to shut her voice out forever. But deep down, I knew she was right. I had seen it with my own eyes, the powder swirling in my glass, the guilt in Emily's face. Margaret wasn't lying. The question was, what the hell was I going to do about it? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house and the muffled voices of Emily and Victor in the guest room upstairs. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind refused to rest. Every memory of Emily as a little girl twisted into a knife. Her first steps, her first day of school, the way she used to crawl into my lap after a nightmare. And now this. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That my daughter tried to poison me? Without proof, it would sound like the ramblings of an old man losing his grip. And if they didn't believe me, Emily would know I was onto her. I needed to be smarter. I decided then I wouldn't confront her yet. I would play along, pretend I didn't know, watch, wait, gather evidence. And when the time came, I'd make sure the truth came out in a way no one could deny. But one thing kept gnawing at me. Margaret's voice, quivering as she spoke about our daughter. About Victor's control. Could it be that Emily wasn't entirely lost? That she was just cornered, desperate, and scared? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. The next morning, I shuffled into the kitchen, feigning my usual stiffness. Emily was already there, her hair pulled back neatly, a forced smile on her lips. Morning, Dad. Sleep okay? Like a rock, I lied, sliding into a chair. She poured me coffee, her hand steady this time. I watched her carefully, pretending not to notice the way her eyes flickered toward the cup as I lifted it. I only took a small sip, letting the bitterness linger on my tongue. Nothing unusual. Not yet. Victor strolled in, freshly shaved, his expensive cologne filling the room. Morning, Nathan, he said smoothly, patting me on the back like we were old friends. Emily and I were talking last night. We think it might be a good time to discuss the house. Simplifying things for you. Less stress, less paperwork. I set the coffee down slowly, meeting his eyes. Simplifying things for me, I repeated. Or for you. He chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. Come on, Nathan. We're family. We just want what's best for you. I leaned back, forcing a smile. Of course. Inside, though, my blood boiled. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. That afternoon, while Emily and Victor went out shopping, I sat in the living room with my phone, staring at Margaret's number. My pride screamed to me not to call, but my instincts told me I needed her. Not for love, not for forgiveness, but because she knew something. Something I didn't. I hit dial. She answered on the first ring. Nathan, you said Victor's dangerous, I said. Tell me everything. And so she did. She told me about the debts Victor had piled up behind Emily's back, the shady business partners, the gambling, the threats, how Emily had called her in tears, begging for advice, how Margaret had warned her to leave him, but Emily refused, afraid of losing her son. She thinks the only way to keep Victor happy is to give him what he wants, Margaret said. Your house, your pension, your savings. I sat there in silence, my chest heavy. My daughter was drowning, and instead of reaching for me, she was willing to drag me under with her. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Margaret's voice cracked. Because I left you once, Nathan. I left both of you. I can't live with myself if I let it happen again. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat in my recliner, the glow of the streetlight spilling through the blinds, and thought about my next move. I couldn't confront Emily, not yet, and I couldn't trust Margaret entirely. But I knew one thing: I had to protect myself, and if I wanted to save Emily, I had to be patient, careful, strategic. I started keeping notes. Every look, every word, every suspicious glance. I wrote it all down in an old leather notebook I kept hidden beneath the floorboard. If they were going to try and break me, I'd be ready. The following week, I noticed something strange. Emily's tone softened. She lingered around me more, asking about old stories, about my time at the plant, about her childhood. Almost like she was searching for the girl she used to be. But every time Victor entered the room, her eyes went cold again. Controlled, afraid. One evening, after Victor had stepped outside to take a call, she sat across from me at the table, her hands trembling. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. Do you ever regret raising me alone?" The question hit me harder than any blow. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Never," I said. "You were my reason for everything." Her eyes welled up, and for a moment, I saw her again, the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms. But just as quickly, the moment passed. Victor's footsteps echoed down the hall, and she pulled her hand back, wiping her eyes. I knew then my daughter was still in there, buried but not gone. And if I wanted to save her, I'd have to find a way to break Victor's hold over her. But how? As I sat awake that night, staring at the ceiling once again, my phone buzzed on the table. A new message from Margaret. It read, "I have proof. Meet me tomorrow. Alone." The message glowed on my phone like a warning flare. "I have proof. Meet me tomorrow. Alone." I sat in my recliner long after midnight, the house silent except for the occasional creak of old wood. Emily and Victor were upstairs, their muffled voices seeping through the ceiling. My stomach churned. Proof of what? And why now? Margaret had been gone for 30 years. Why crawl out of the shadows at this exact moment? Part of me wanted to ignore it, to delete the message and forget I ever saw it. But another part, the part that had seen my daughter's trembling hand over my drink, knew I couldn't. The truth was closing in, and I had no choice but to chase it. The next morning, Emily made pancakes like nothing was wrong. She hummed softly as she flipped them, the same tune she used to hum when she was 10 years old, perched on a stool while I taught her how to stir batter. For a brief moment, my heart ached with nostalgia, but the image of that swirling powder in my glass cut through it like a knife. "Dad, you're quiet today," she said, sliding a plate in front of me. "Just didn't sleep well," I lied, stabbing a fork into the stack. I chewed slowly, pretending to eat, while every muscle in my body screamed at me to stay alert. Victor strolled in, yawning. "We're heading out later, Nathan," he said smoothly. "There's a property we want to look at. Thought maybe you'd like to tag along, get some fresh air." His grin was too wide, too polished. "Maybe next time," I muttered. He shrugged, kissed Emily on the cheek, and disappeared into the garage. Emily lingered. Her eyes darted to my plate. "You know I love you, right?" she whispered. The words nearly broke me. Nearly. But I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course." When she left, I slipped the pancakes into the trash. I met Margaret at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where the booze smelled like old coffee, and the same waitress had probably worked there for decades. My hands trembled as I pushed open the glass door, the bell above it jingling. And there she was, Margaret. Time had carved its story across her face, lines of regret, shadows of sorrow. But her eyes were the same, blue as a winter sky. When she looked up and saw me, her lips parted, and for a moment neither of us spoke. 30 years of silence pressed between us like a wall. "Nathan," she said softly. "Margaret." My voice came out rougher than I intended. We sat across from each other. The waitress poured coffee without asking, and I wrapped my hands around the mug just to keep them from shaking. Finally, I said, "You said you had proof." She nodded, reaching into her purse. She slid a manila envelope across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photographs, bank statements, credit card bills, gambling slips, all in Victor's name. Numbers that screamed debt. Thousands. Tens of thousands. A bottomless pit he'd been digging for years. Emily doesn't know the full extent, Margaret said. He's been lying to her, but I overheard him on the phone one night. He plans to use your pension, your house, everything you've worked for, to pay off his debts. And if she doesn't convince you, he'll leave her. He'll take their son. I clench my jaw, staring at the papers. And she's willing to poison me for that. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She's desperate. I beg her to leave him, Nathan. But she thinks she can't raise her boy alone. She thinks Victor's her only option. My chest tightened. My Emily, my little girl who once clung to my leg at the grocery store, terrified I'd let go, was now clinging to a man who would destroy her. And in trying to save herself, she was willing to sacrifice me. I slid the envelope back. You should have been here, I said coldly. If you hadn't left, maybe she wouldn't be this lost. Margaret flinched. I know. I live with that every day. But I'm here now, and I want to help. I studied her face, searching for lies. But all I saw was regret, raw and unfiltered. Still, I couldn't forget the past. I wouldn't. Help, I asked. Why should I trust you now? She leaned forward. Because I know Victor's next move. He's planning to get you declared unfit. He's been talking to a lawyer. If Emily can prove you're not capable of making decisions, mental decline, memory loss, anything, they can force you into a nursing home. And the court hands them control of your estate. The words sent ice through my veins. And how exactly do they plan to prove that? Margaret's voice dropped. By poisoning you, slowly, making you look confused, forgetful. By the time anyone realizes, it'll be too late. I gripped the mug so tightly I thought it would crack. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. But beneath it, a strange calm settled in. If this was their game, then I would play mine. And I'd make damn sure I won. When I got home, Emily and Victor were sitting in the living room. Emily looked anxious, her fingers twisting in her lap. Victor leaned back in his chair, a smug smile plastered across his face. Dad, Emily began, we were talking. We think it might be time to get some help around here. Someone to check in on you. You know, just in case. My blood boiled, but I forced a smile. That's thoughtful, I said. But I'm doing just fine. Victor's smile widened. We'll see, Nathan. We'll see. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I sat on the edge of my bed, the manila envelope spread out before me. Proof of Victor's debts. Proof of his lies. And a daughter caught in the middle, drowning in fear and desperation. I wanted to storm upstairs, shove the papers in Emily's face, and demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Because Margaret's words echoed in my head. He'll make you look unfit. If I lost my temper now, I'd be playing right into his hands. So I stayed silent. I kept my notes, and I began planning. Slowly, carefully, like a man who had nothing left to lose but his dignity, and everything to gain by taking back control. As I turned off the light, I whispered to myself, you picked the wrong man to bury, Victor. The following week, I pretended to go along with their charade. I drank only when Emily wasn't watching. I played the part of the tired old man, forgetting things here and there, moving slower, letting them believe their plan was working. But behind closed doors, I was sharper than ever. Writing, recording, watching. One evening, as Victor left the house for another business meeting, I caught Emily alone in the kitchen. She looked worn, dark circles under her eyes. Dad, she whispered, glancing toward the door. Do you trust me? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to answer carefully. Do you trust yourself, Emily? Her eyes shimmered with tears. But before she could respond, Victor's car pulled back into the driveway, headlights flashing through the window. She quickly turned away, wiping her face. And in that moment, I knew she was still my daughter. Somewhere deep down, buried beneath fear and manipulation, she was still the girl I raised. I just had to find a way to reach her before it was too late. That night, I opened my notebook again. I wrote down everything Margaret had told me, every suspicious move Victor had made, every flicker of doubt I'd seen in Emily's eyes. And then I wrote one final line at the bottom of the page. I will not go quietly. As I closed the book, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. It read, if you want to save Emily, meet me tomorrow at the old steel mill. Come alone. My heart pounded. Was it Margaret? Victor? Someone else entirely? One thing was certain. The game had just changed. The message burned on my phone screen like a brand. If you want to save Emily, meet me tomorrow at the old steel mill. Come alone. The steel mill. My second home for nearly 40 years. I knew every beam, every rusting machine, every echo in those cavernous halls. It was where I broke my back so Emily could eat, where I sweated through winters so she could have heat. And now, it was calling me back like a grave, waiting to swallow me whole. All night, I turned the words over in my head. Who had sent it? Margaret, trying to protect me? Victor, setting a trap? Or Emily herself, reaching out in secret? The possibilities churned like molten steel, each one heavier than the last. But one thing was certain, I couldn't ignore it. If there was a chance to save my daughter, I had to take it. The next morning, I dressed in old work clothes, the kind I hadn't worn in years. Sturdy boots, heavy jacket, clothes that felt like armor. Emily and Victor were still asleep upstairs, so I slipped out before dawn, the cold air biting my skin. The streets were empty, the town quiet. I drove the familiar road to the mill, the silhouette of its smokestacks looming against the gray horizon like broken teeth. When I pulled in the cracked lot, the place was as dead as I remembered. Windows shattered, rust clinging to every surface. A hollow shell of the life it once held. I killed the engine, my heart hammering. The silence was so thick I could hear the wind whistling through broken panes. I stepped inside, boots crunching on gravel and glass. The air smelled of dust and oil, old memories rising with every breath. My flashlight cut through the shadows, sweeping across graffiti-covered walls and piles of scrap metal. The echoes of my own footsteps followed me like ghosts. Nathan. The voice froze me in place. Low. Familiar. I swung the light toward the sound. Margaret stepped out from the shadows. She looked smaller than I remembered, her coat hanging loose on her frame, her face pale in the dim light. She raised her hand slightly, as if to prove she meant no harm. You sent the message? I asked, my voice rough. She nodded. I had to. Victor's moving faster than I thought. He's planning to meet with his lawyer tomorrow. If you don't act now, you'll lose everything. I narrowed my eyes. And what exactly do you expect me to do? March into his office and stop him? She shook her head. No, I have something that will stop him for good. She pulled a small recorder from her pocket and pressed play. Victor's voice filled the air, cold and sharp. The old man won't last much longer. Emily's soft, but she'll come around. Once he's in a home, the pension's ours. The house, too. If he puts up a fight, well, accidents happen. My stomach twisted. Hearing his voice, so casual, so cruel, lit a fire in me I hadn't felt in years. Proof. Finally, proof. Where did you get this? I asked. Margaret looked down. Emily called me. She left the recorder running during one of his phone calls. She's scared, Nathan. She doesn't want this. Not really. She was trying to protect you. My knees weakened, the weight of it nearly bringing me to the ground. My daughter, my Emily, had risked herself to get this? The image of her trembling hands, the powder slipping into my drink, clashed with the idea that she was also trying to save me. The contradictions tore me in two. She almost poisoned me. I whispered, my voice breaking. She's being pushed, Margaret said firmly. Victor's breaking her. But this proves what he's planning. If we take it to the right people, we can stop him. And maybe, just maybe, save her. I stared at the recorder, my hands trembling. After all these years, Margaret was here, asking me to trust her again. Asking me to believe that Emily wasn't lost. My chest ached with anger, sorrow, and something dangerously close to hope. Before I could respond, a sound echoed through the mill, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Margaret's eyes widened. We're not alone. I shoved the recorder into my pocket, just as a figure stepped out of the shadows. Victor, his polished shoes crunched against the gravel, his expensive coat gleaming even in the dim light. He clapped slowly, the sound mocking. Well, isn't this touching? He sneered. The broken family reunion. Emily will be so disappointed she wasn't invited. My fists clenched. "What the hell are you doing here, Victor?" He smirked. "I could ask you the same, but I already know the answer. You're meddling, Nathan, digging where you shouldn't. And now you've dragged Margaret into it too." Margaret stepped forward. "You won't win, Victor. We have proof. Your own words." Victor chuckled darkly. "You think anyone will believe two washed-up has-beens? An old man losing his mind, and a woman who abandoned her family? Please, by the time I'm done, no one will even remember your names." He took a step closer, his eyes glinting. "Give me the recorder, Nathan. Now." I stood my ground, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, I felt the strength of the steel mill in my bones, the years of sweat, of grit, of surviving when everything else said I should have given up. I wasn't that weak old man he thought I was. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You're not taking another damn thing from me." Victor's smile faded. His eyes darkened. He reached inside his coat, and for a terrifying second, I thought he had a weapon. But instead, he pulled out a phone. "Then Emily pays the price." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" He smirked. "She's more loyal than you think. She's waiting for my call right now. One word from me, and she'll finish what she started with that drink." Margaret gasped. I stepped forward, fury blazing in my chest. "You bastard." Victor tilted his head. "Hand it over, Nathan, or your daughter will do something she can't take back." The air crackled with tension. My mind raced. If I gave him the recorder, he'd destroy it and walk free. But if I didn't, Emily's life, her soul, was already dangling by a thread. Could she survive crossing that final line? I looked at Margaret. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do it, Nathan. He's bluffing." But was he? My heart thundered, torn between rage and fear, between saving the proof and saving my daughter. The steel mill seemed to hold its breath. The echoes of my past, every hammer strike, every shouted order, every drop of sweat, surrounded me, urging me to choose. Slowly, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the recorder. Victor's eyes lit up with triumph. But instead of handing it to him, I tightened my grip and said, "If Emily's waiting for your call, maybe it's time she heard the truth." Before he could react, I pressed play. Victor's voice filled the mill again, louder this time, echoing off the walls. "The old man won't last much longer. Once he's in a home, the pension's ours. The house, too. If he puts up a fight, well, accidents happen." Victor's face drained of color. Margaret's eyes widened. And from behind us, a voice broke the silence. "Dad!" I spun around. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She had heard everything. Emily's face was pale as moonlight, her hand trembling on the rusty steel beam she clung to for balance. Her eyes darted from Victor to me, then back again, confusion and fear battling across her features. For a long moment, the air in that broken mill was heavy, like the whole place was holding its breath, waiting for her to speak. "Emily," I whispered, my throat dry. "You heard him." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, tears welled in her eyes. She looked like the little girl I once carried on my shoulders to see fireworks on the 4th of July, overwhelmed by noise and light, unable to process the chaos. Only now, the chaos wasn't fireworks. It was the crumbling foundation of her own marriage, and her father's love caught in the crossfire. Victor moved first. He stepped toward her, his voice smooth, desperate. "Baby, listen. He's twisting everything. He wants to poison you against me. He's always hated me." Emily shook her head slowly, her gaze locked on Victor. No, I heard you. I heard every word." Her voice cracked. My heart split at the sound. Victor tried again, his mask slipping, his tone sharpening. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Your father's stubbornness has left us no choice. Do you want to keep living in that cramped house? Do you want to spend your life scraping by while he hoards his pension and clings to that worthless property?" Her tears fell harder now, streaking her cheeks. You told me it was just about protecting us. That he didn't care about me anymore. That he..." Her voice faltered as the truth unraveled. But you were lying. Victor's face hardened, and suddenly the charm was gone. What remained was something colder. And what if I was? You think love pays the bills? You think your father can give you the life I can? He pointed at me with a sneer. He's a broken man clinging to his past. Without me, you're nothing but his caretaker. That was it. Something in Emily snapped. Her sobs cut off, replaced by a fury I had never seen in her. She squared her shoulders, her chin trembling but lifted high. Don't you ever talk about my father like that. For the first time, I saw my daughter's fire again. The fire I thought Victor had extinguished. It was small, flickering, but it was there. Victor scoffed, stepping closer. You're making a mistake. If you turn against me now, you'll regret it. I moved instinctively, positioning myself between them. My voice was steady. She's not afraid of you anymore. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere deep in the mill. Victor's jaw clenched. He looked at Emily, then at me, his eyes cold and calculating. Finally, he spat at the ground and stormed toward the exit. But before he disappeared into the night, he threw one last dagger over his shoulder. This isn't over. Neither of you knows what I'm capable of. The sound of his footsteps faded, leaving only the echo of his threat. Emily stood frozen, her chest heaving, her tears still wet. Slowly, I reached out, afraid she might recoil. But she collapsed against me instead, sobbing into my chest like she did when she was a child. My arms wrapped around her automatically, muscle memory from years gone by. I'm sorry, Daddy, she cried. I didn't know. I didn't see it. I thought he loved me. My throat burned. You wanted to believe the best in him. That's not your fault. She pulled back, her eyes red but searching mine with desperation. What do we do now? He's not going to stop. I glanced at the recorder still in my pocket, Victor's confession safely tucked inside. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we had leverage. But I also knew Victor. He was dangerous when cornered. The fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. We stand together, I said firmly. That's what we do. Emily nodded, but fear lingered in her gaze. You won't let this go, Dad. You know that, right? I did, and I knew the steel mill showdown was just the opening act. The following morning, Emily refused to go back to Victor's house. Instead, she came home with me. It was strange, seeing her in the kitchen again, barefoot, her hair pulled into a messy bun like when she was a teenager. For a moment, it almost felt like the years hadn't passed. But every time her phone buzzed with Victor's name, the illusion shattered. She silenced the calls, her hands shaking. He won't stop calling. I put a hand on hers. Then we stopped answering. But deep down, I knew silence wouldn't protect us. Victor wasn't the kind of man to accept rejection quietly. And sure enough, 2 days later, the first sign came. I was sitting on the porch when a black SUV slowed as it passed the house. Its tinted windows reflected the morning sun, but I felt the weight of unseen eyes. Emily noticed it too. She froze in the doorway, clutching her coffee mug. Dad, she whispered. I forced a smile. Just a car. Don't worry. But I was worried. Very. That night, Margaret called again. Her voice was calm but urgent. He won't stop, Nathan. Not until he gets what he wants. I told you, Victor has connections. He doesn't play fair. I gripped the phone tighter. Then what do you suggest? There was a pause. You've got the recording, right? Use it. Go to the police before he makes his next move. I glanced at Emily across the room, curled on the couch, her face pale with exhaustion. And if the police don't believe us? Margaret's voice dropped lower. Then you'll have to make them believe. Because Victor, he's not just after your pension, Nathan. He's after control. And he won't care who he destroys to get it. Her words chilled me to the bone. But before I could respond, a loud knock rattled the front door. Emily shot upright, fear in her eyes. Dad, she whispered. It's him. I motioned for her to stay back and slowly approached the door. My heart hammered as I gripped the handle and pulled it open. On the porch stood not Victor, but a uniformed officer. Mr. Hayes? He asked, his expression unreadable. We need to talk. I swallowed hard. About what? He held up a folded piece of paper. There's been a report filed against you. Financial misconduct. Fraud. We'll need you to come with us for questioning. Behind me, I heard Emily gasp. My stomach dropped. This was Victor's move. He was trying to bury me before I could bury him. The officer waited, his hand hovering near his holster. Emily rushed forward. "No, my father hasn't done anything wrong. It's my husband. You don't understand." But the officer didn't flinch. "Ma'am, please step back." I looked at my daughter, at her wide, terrified eyes, and I knew this was it. The storm had arrived. Victor had struck first, and unless I played this next move perfectly, everything I had fought for, my freedom, my daughter, my very name, would be destroyed. The cruiser door slammed behind me, the metallic clang echoing like a gavel striking judgment. My wrists itched from the cuffs, but what hurt worse was Emily's face as the officer led me away. She stood in the doorway, her mouth open in shock, hands trembling as if she'd just watched me vanish into a storm. Victor had moved faster than I thought possible, filing charges against me. Fraud, financial misconduct, lies woven so neatly they had convinced the police to drag me from my own home like a criminal. At the station, they sat me in a sterile room with white walls and a buzzing fluorescent light that flickered as if mocking my heartbeat. A detective walked in, tall and sharp-eyed, his badge catching the glow. "Mr. Hayes," he said, setting a file on the table. "You're being accused of diverting pension funds illegally. Evidence suggests you've been hiding assets." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Evidence? What evidence? He opened a file, revealing papers I had never seen before, bank statements, contracts with forged signatures, even a supposed testimony from someone who claimed I'd bragged about hiding money offshore. Victor's fingerprints were all over this. Not literally, but in the smoothness, the calculated detail, the way he buried me in lies that looked real. The detective studied me. "You deny this?" I leaned forward, steady, every word, and I can prove it, but not right this second, because the man who filed these charges is my son-in-law, and he has more to hide than you realize. The detective raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation." I stared him dead in the eye. "So are his crimes." Meanwhile, Emily wasn't idle. I didn't know at the time, but while I sat in that room under interrogation, she was tearing through Victor's office desk back at their house. She told me later how her hands shook as she opened drawers, scattering receipts and files across the floor. She found the ledger first, handwritten notes where Victor tracked contributions from shady names she didn't recognize. Next, an envelope thick with cash. And finally, a lockbox. She nearly gave up until she remembered where he kept the spare key, taped beneath his golf bag. When she pried it open, what she found made her blood run cold. A stack of documents showing transfers from my accounts. Forged, every one of them. She snapped photos with her phone, her heart hammering. She knew she was holding the proof that could save me, but also the proof that Victor would do anything to protect. Back at the station, the detective leaned closer. "Mr. Hayes, if what you say is true, you'd better have something solid. Otherwise, this looks very bad for you." I swallowed hard. "I do have something. A recording. Him admitting everything. But it's not here, it's at my house." He studied me for a long moment, skepticism in his eyes. Then his radio buzzed. He answered, listened, and his expression shifted. "Sir," he said finally, standing, "it seems your daughter just brought in some interesting materials. We'll be back." My heart surged with hope. Emily. Brave, stubborn Emily. Maybe she just cracked Victor's wall wide open. They released me later that evening, but under tight conditions. The charges weren't dropped, just suspended while they reviewed the evidence. Emily met me in the lobby, her face streaked with exhaustion but lit with determination. "I've got him, Dad," she whispered fiercely. "I found everything. He's not going to win." I pulled her into a hug, my voice raw. "I'm proud of you. You don't know how proud." She smiled faintly, but it didn't last. "He knows I took them. He's going to come after us." I nodded grimly. "Then we stay ahead of him." The next day was a blur of lawyers, meetings, and statements. My attorney, a gray-haired bulldog named Franklin Ward, pored over Emily's findings with a scowl. "This is damning," he muttered, flipping through forged documents. "If we can authenticate these, your son-in-law is finished." But Franklin also warned us, Men like Victor don't roll over. If he feels cornered, he'll strike harder. You need to prepare yourselves for that. Emily looked at me, fear flickering in her eyes. What if he tries to hurt us? I put a steady hand on hers. Then he'll find out we're not afraid anymore. 2 nights later, it happened. We were at home, the house dark except for the soft glow of the lamp by my recliner. Emily had just finished sorting documents when the glass shattered. A rock crashed through the window, landing on the floor with a dull thud. Taped to it was a note in Victor's handwriting. Drop it, or next time, it won't be a rock. Emily's breath caught. Dad. I picked up the note, my jaw tightening. This is desperation. He knows he's losing. She stared at me, trembling. But what if he? I cut her off gently. Then we finished this. Once and for all. The hearing came quickly. A small courtroom, packed with tension. Victor sat across the aisle, sharp suit, smug smile, his lawyer whispering in his ear. But for the first time, he looked uneasy when Emily entered, clutching the evidence. I gave her a reassuring nod. We had the recording, the forged papers, and now, the rock with his threat. It was all there. Piece by piece, his empire of lies was collapsing. The judge called us forward. My lawyer presented the evidence, methodical and relentless. The recording of Victor's confession echoed through the courtroom, his own voice sealing his fate. Emily testified bravely, her words cutting through his lies like a knife. Victor tried to interject, shouting, accusing me of manipulation, accusing Emily of betrayal. But his mask cracked. The more he spoke, the more desperate he sounded. By the time his lawyer tried to calm him, it was too late. The room could see him for what he truly was. When the session adjourned, the judge ordered an official investigation into Victor's finances. He wasn't in handcuffs yet, but I could see it coming. His empire of deceit was crumbling, and he knew it. As Emily and I walked out of the courthouse, the evening air cool against our skin, she turned to me. It's not over yet, is it? I looked at her, my heart heavy but strong. No, but we've turned the tide. He can't hide forever. She nodded, a fire in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't the daughter who had been blinded by love. She was my ally, my partner, my blood. But as we reached the car, I noticed a figure watching from across the street. Victor, his eyes locked on us, burning with fury. And in that moment, I knew his next move wouldn't be in a courtroom. The night after court, sleep was impossible. Every sound in the house made Emily jump. Every shadow made my chest tighten. We both knew Victor wasn't going to sit quietly and wait for justice. He was a cornered wolf now, and cornered wolves are the most dangerous. I sat in my recliner, staring at the glowing embers in the fireplace, my shotgun leaning quietly against the wall. Emily sat nearby, curled in a blanket, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Dad, she whispered, breaking the silence. What if he actually tries something? I mean, what if he doesn't just scare us? What if? Her voice cracked. I looked at her, my heart aching. She had always been strong, but this fear was different. It wasn't about Victor anymore. It was about survival. Then we'll be ready, I said firmly. I've been underestimated my whole life, Emily. By bosses, by neighbors, by Victor. But not anymore. If he comes, he'll learn the hard way. She nodded, wiping her tears. I trust you, Dad. That trust was tested sooner than either of us expected. At 2:17 a.m., the sound came. A faint crunch of gravel outside. The whisper of footsteps across the porch. I stiffened, my senses sharpening. Emily froze, her wide eyes locked on mine. Then, a faint metallic scrape at the back door. Victor. I gestured for Emily to stay low, then grabbed the shotgun and moved silently through the hallway. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like thunder. Through the kitchen window, I saw him. Dark clothes, gloves, the gleam of a crowbar in his hand. His face twisted with fury and desperation. I could have pulled the trigger right then, ended it, but I wanted him caught, not killed. Justice, not blood. I whispered back toward Emily, who was peeking around the corner. Call the sheriff. Now. She nodded, hands trembling as she dialed. The lock gave way with a pop, and Victor slipped inside. His eyes darted, searching. He muttered under his breath, voice dripping with venom. "Where are you, old man? You think you can ruin me?" I stepped from the shadows, shotgun raised, steady. "It's over, Victor." He froze, crowbar raised, eyes burning. Then he laughed, cold, bitter. "You really think a washed-up old fool and his weak little daughter can take me down?" Behind me, Emily's voice rang out, steady, strong. "They already have, Victor. The police are on their way." His head snapped toward her, fury twisting his face. "You traitor!" He lunged. I fired, not at him, but at the wall beside him. The blast thundered through the house, the spray of wood splinters making him stumble back. "Next one's not a warning," I growled. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear, and then sirens. The distant wail growing louder, blue and red lights flashing through the window. Victor cursed, spinning toward the back door, but Emily stood there now, blocking his escape. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were blazing. "You don't get to hurt us anymore," she said. The deputies burst in seconds later, weapons drawn. Victor dropped the crowbar as they tackled him, pinning him to the floor. His screams filled the house, wild and furious. "You think this is over?" he spat as they dragged him out in cuffs. "I'll bury you both. You'll regret this." But his threats fell flat. His power was gone. His empire of lies shattered. The days that followed felt surreal. Victor was officially charged, not just with financial fraud, but with attempted assault, breaking and entering, and intimidation. The evidence Emily and I had gathered sealed his fate. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One evening, Emily and I sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky orange and gold. She leaned against my shoulder, her voice soft. "I can't believe it's finally over." I took a deep breath, watching the horizon. "It's not over. Not completely. Healing takes time. But we're free, Emily, and that's what matters." She looked up at me, tears glistening in her eyes. "I should have seen it sooner. I should have believed you from the start." I shook my head gently. "Don't blame yourself. Love blinds us all sometimes. What matters is that you found the strength to open your eyes. You saved me, Emily. You saved us." She smiled faintly. "No, Dad. You saved me." Months passed. Victor's trial came and went. He was sentenced to years in prison, his fortune seized, his reputation destroyed. The man who thought he was untouchable ended up just another number behind bars. Emily rebuilt her life. She filed for divorce, found her own place, and started therapy to untangle the knots Victor had tied around her heart. It wasn't easy, but she grew stronger every day. As for me, I found peace in small things. Gardening, watching the sunrise, Sunday dinners with Emily where we laughed more than we cried. One afternoon, as we sat together in the backyard, she asked, "Do you ever regret it, Dad? Raising me alone all those years, giving up everything for me?" I looked at her, my throat tightening. "Never. Not once. You're my greatest gift, and I'd do it all again, even knowing the pain. Because in the end, you came back to me." She smiled through tears, squeezing my hand. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Revenge hadn't saved me. Strength hadn't saved me. Love had. Quiet, patient, enduring love. The kind that outlasts betrayal, fear, and even death threats. Victor had tried to poison me, to destroy me, to erase me. But he failed, because love doesn't break. It bends, it bruises, but it doesn't break. And as the sun set behind us, I knew I had won. Not just against Victor, but against the bitterness that could have consumed me. I was still here, still standing, still a father, and that was victory enough.